In this video we'll be looking at how to work out what lane to be in when you're approaching a roundabout, and also what you need to do in terms of signalling when you're approaching roundabouts and when you're leaving roundabouts, as this is an area which often seems to cause drivers quite a few problems when they're learning to drive, and actually when you look at experienced drivers it also seems to cause a lot of problems. When you're on the road as much as I am, it's very common to see drivers making many mistakes in regard to their positioning on roundabouts, and that goes on to lead to conflict and of course sometimes to collisions. So it's really important, especially for the inexperienced and learner drivers, to make sure they know exactly where they should be so that they avoid those kind of conflict situations. Of course, you also need to always be aware that just because you are in the correct position, it doesn't mean that everyone else is going to do the right thing. You have to also make allowances for the mistakes that other people will make when they're using roundabouts. One of the reasons people make so many mistakes with roundabouts and struggle to understand what lane they should be in is because there's such a huge range and variety of roundabouts that you will encounter when you're driving. But actually understanding what you need to do is still quite simple, and it starts from some very simple basic principles. The easy way to work out what lane to use as you approach a roundabout is to remember that we drive on the left, and we should keep left at all times unless we have a good reason to do otherwise. When you're approaching a roundabout, the kind of good reason that you might have for not using the left-hand lane would be if you're turning right, so taking an exit on the right-hand side of the roundabout, or if lane markings indicate that you should use a different lane in order to reach your destination. So what we're going to look at here is a very simple, straightforward roundabout, which is kind of where most roundabouts are modelled from. It's a very simple crossroads roundabout. So you've got 4 exits roughly at 90 degrees to one another. In this case we're looking at the junction of the A326 Totton Western Bypass and the A336 Ringwood Road on the edge of Totton, just outside Southampton. Each approach to the roundabout either has 2 lanes marked, or in 3 out of the 4 cases, in fact it doesn't have 2 lanes marked, but there is space for 2 lanes. So we need to treat it as if those markings are there and use all the road space depending on where we're going on the roundabout. We're going to assume we are approaching from the southern entrance, which is in the bottom of the image, as this mirrors the same format that road signs use when you're approaching roundabouts, in that on road signs you are assumed to be approaching from the bottom of the road sign towards the roundabout. So this will just mirror that, so when you come to do your independent driving, where you might be following a sat-nav or following road signs, this will help you quickly gather the information you need to work out where you need to be approaching the roundabout. So with our example roundabout, as we approach, if we're taking exit 1 on our left, we'd approach in the left-hand lane. If we're going to approach to take exit 2, we'd approach in the left-hand lane also, and keep left as we go around the roundabout until we get to our exit. If we're approaching to turn right, taking exit 3, we would move into the right-hand lane as it develops when we're approaching the roundabout, and then follow the roundabout around to the right, sticking to the right-hand lane on the roundabout, so keeping close to the centre island, until we get round close to our exit, where we'll be moving across and starting to come off the roundabout. So what we've done here is use that principle of keeping left unless we have a good reason to be in the right-hand lane. None of the entrances we're looking at have got road markings telling us what lane to be in, so we just have to use that basic rule. For the left exit and the straight ahead exit, we use the left-hand lane because we're not turning right, and then for the right-hand exit, we pick up the right-hand lane because we're making a right turn at the roundabout. So let's move on to look at a slightly more interesting example. Here we're looking at the University roundabout on Wallersdown Road in Bournemouth. This has a pretty similar crossroads layout to the last example we looked at, with 4 entrances coming in, all at roughly 90 degrees to each other. The entrances from north and south are essentially the same as before. We've got 2 lanes in each case, there's no road markings, so we treat it exactly the same as we would with the previous example. The western entrance is a little bit different. As you approach initially, you see there's 2 lanes forming, one with a straight on arrow and one with a right arrow. Obviously if you were turning right, you'd take the right hand lane at that point, and if you're going straight on or left, you'd pick up the left hand lane, and then when that splits again, it's highlighted with the 2 different direction arrows, so left lane for turning left, and then the middle lane takes you straight ahead at the roundabout. Usually when there are 3 or more lanes at the entrance to a roundabout, you'll find that the lanes are marked to show you where you should be. I'd like to say that when there are 3 or more lanes, they would always be marked. Generally they are, but I'm sure there is an exception to the rule out there somewhere where there are 3 lanes on the approach and there aren't any markings. in which case you will need to approach fairly cautiously, but I would generally expect it to work pretty much as the lane markings are shown here at the west entrance, with 3 lanes, left lane for the left turn, middle lane for the straight ahead, and then the right lane for the right turn. If you're approaching this roundabout from the eastern entrance, you'll be able to see now how lane markings can cause your approach to deviate from the normal rules that you would follow. Without lane markings, you'd expect to approach in a left-hand lane if you were going straight ahead, then enter the roundabout, follow the left-hand lane around the roundabout before leaving to the second exit. However, with the lane markings as they're shown, where the right-hand lane is indicated for straight ahead and the left-hand lane for left turn only, you'd approach in the right-hand lane. Then as you enter the roundabout, you'll notice how the left-hand lane is then marked for straight ahead and the right-hand lane for right turn. This isn't uncommon. Sometimes it would be the other way around and the right-hand lane would still be shown for straight ahead. I personally prefer the second option with the right-hand lane marked for straight ahead. It's a little bit too much to cover in this video, but I feel that the first example where you move into the left-hand lane to go straight ahead on the roundabout isn't the safest approach you can have with this sort of road design. So to summarise how you decide on lane position at roundabouts, you should always keep left as you approach, unless you are turning right or lane markings and road signs indicate that you should use a different lane. The great advantage you have during driving lessons and on your driving test is that most of the time you are given big hints about how to treat a roundabout if you take the instructions on board. If your instructor or examiner are giving directions, they will tell you to turn left, follow the road ahead, or turn right. They are telling you what to treat the exit as. Likewise, if you are following a sat-nav during the independent driving part of the driving test, you are given similar instructions on how to treat a particular exit. It is only when you are asked to follow road signs that you'll have to make up your own mind about how to treat a particular exit on a roundabout, which is a subject for another time. So how do you know what to signal at a roundabout? As you are approaching a roundabout, if you are taking an exit on the right, you should signal right as you approach and maintain the right signal around the roundabout until you are approaching your exit. Otherwise, you give no signal before the roundabout unless you are taking the first exit on the left, in which case you signal left as you approach and maintain the left signal until you have exited. When you have passed the exit prior to yours, you signal left to tell other road users you intend to leave at the next exit.